Good day, I'm Dr. T and welcome to my office. So today I would like to talk about a bit of kit that I find particularly helpful as an instructor. And the first bit of kit is going to be kind of a little bit more generic, just simply as someone who works in an office from time to time. Because of course you're going to have your office, you're going to be working in there, grading papers, doing all that kind of stuff. So you do want to take advantage of the general advice out there about ergonomic offices. Basically offices that don't cause you pain because it makes you distorting in weird ways. So first piece of advice, make sure you get a halfway decent chair. Your chair, you're going to be spending a lot of time sitting there while you're grading, while you're responding to emails, etc. You want something that allows you to sit with a posture that is healthful. You know, not something where you're slouched over and killing your back or something else. So you want a decent chair. Now, chairs are a tad bit expensive, so just giving you a heads up there. But they do last quite a while. So an old good chair is still a good chair. Now, when we're on the topic of ergonomics while you're in the office, let's talk monitors. A lot of people typically have their monitors a little bit too low. Ideally, you want to be looking at the monitor and the taskbar and the toolbars that you have for whatever program you're using should be pretty much at eye level. This way, most of what you're actually going to be doing, because you don't usually spend all that time looking at the taskbar, but most of what you are going to be looking at, say the emails, etc., are going to be just a little below eye level. That way, you just simply glance down a bit and you type very comfortable. If they are too low, and this is very common, a lot of folks have it so when you look at your monitor, you can actually look over the monitor. In that case, you're going to be tempted to crouch down to get a better view of what you're working on, and what you will find is that very soon, especially if you're old like me, your back hurts. So, you know, if you're still in college, you might be young enough that the back won't hurt, but once you get a little bit older, yeah, you want to make sure you're not hunched over. So this way, if your monitor is a little bit higher up, you're going to keep good posture and your back won't hurt, or at least not as badly, after a long day of responding to emails, etc. Now, obviously, your monitor may only go up as high as it does. You've got a couple of options. One, there are monitor stands where you screw them onto the desk, take the feet off the monitor and screw them onto the stand. Not all monitors will work with this. That may not fit your optimal setup. So alternatively, there are monitor stands that are basically just little tables. So this is what I use. And so it's a simple little plastic table that holds the monitor up to a much more comfortable height. Strongly encourage that. Now, if you are using a laptop, you could go with a small plastic table to raise the laptop up and then go with a keyboard and mouse separate, and that way you kind of disconnect. Always a great choice. By the way, if you are buying keyboards, I totally love mechanical switches. Nice MX Cherry Brown or an MX Cherry Blue. Beautiful switches on the keyboards, but those are definitely premium keyboards. But if you've got your laptop and you're not wanting to, do a separate independent keyboard of whatever type, once again, you can get a very cheap keyboard. But if you're not wanting to do that, you just want to set up the laptop and use its internal keyboard, then I strongly recommend getting one of the angled laptop stands. So these guys work by putting the laptop at an angle. They've got several benefits to them. One, you'll notice is kind of a mesh. Some of them will even have fans in there that you plug in, and this is going to help your laptop with cooling. Back in the day, that was a little bit more of an issue, and it does depend on your make and model. Recently, that's been less of a concern. But it lifts the laptop up, gets the screen a little bit higher, and you're not going to be crunched over as badly. Additionally, because it's at an angle, that's going to help your wrists. Because another thing you have to worry about is good old-fashioned carpal tunnel or tennis elbow, repetitive strain injuries. These are going to be fairly common if you're working at your computer a ton. So if you've got a laptop, your arms are going to be kind of like this. Obviously, they're going to be down here where it's not on camera, but you get the idea. They're kind of like this, and this is not going to be particularly healthy for your wrists. Great way to get repetitive strain injury. Now, if you're able to move your arms to kind of line them up, get the wrists much more in line, then that's going to help you. And you've got two ways of doing that. If it's a laptop, that laptop lift is going to take, instead of like this, is going to raise your arms up kind of in this fashion, and that really does help. I had to get this guy, not for the back, but for the wrists back in grad school, because once again, writing that dissertation, repetitive strain injury on both wrists, and it got fairly bad for a little while. by simply lifting that up. That works well. Additionally, if you've got a desk, I know these are really not in favor anymore, or these really out of fashion, but I do also like the keyboard drawers. So if you are using a detached keyboard, so not for a laptop or you're docking your laptop, but the pull-out keyboard trays that put it down by your feet, or down by your legs, I should say, that really does help a lot. Now, when it comes to your mouse, you have an interesting option. They're a little bit pricey, but I really like the vertical mice. The idea here, and this is a Logitech model, the idea here is you grab the mouse in this fashion. So not the normal kind of like this, which once again, repetitive strain injuries, wrist, but also elbow. I was having a lot of issues with my elbow. This changes the angle, much more natural feel, a lot easier to use. Logitech is claiming 20% reduction in strain. Honestly, I believe it. It's not perfect, but it does help a lot. So I do like a nice vertical mouse. This particular model is either wireless or wired, which is this nice option. It plugs in the front. So I do encourage a nice vertical mouse. I have switched to that for both home and work. When I use a mouse, I really do like the vertical ones. Okay, so moving on from desk equipment and moving on things that are a little bit cheaper. One thing you will occasionally need is a gift right off the bat. You've got an SI or a student worker who is graduating, a friend of yours is retiring, etc. So it is very nice to have on hand a small collection of gifts that you can give. And one thing I do encourage, or I like, are some nice thematically appropriate paperbacks. So actually you'll notice I've reviewed Napoleon's Buttons and A Perfect Red, I believe. Alchemy of the Air, really good. I don't think I reviewed this. I need to if I haven't. But what I like to do is keep a few paperbacks, 10, 20 bucks each, on my shelf that are, once again, thematically appropriate for what I teach. So if I'm giving these to, say, an SI or a TA or somebody, it makes sense. And this way, if I need a gift, I just grab it, give it to them, and then order a new one. Really straightforward, great way of doing this. And then I have another variety of books that I keep at home for personal friends. For maybe some kids. If I've got a friend's kid who needs a gift or something, that kind of thing. But yeah, general idea: grab some paperback books. Great instant gift. You every now and then need an instant gift. Now, a little bit more specific to teaching. So everything else I've said is very generic, so it's not specific to teaching. But with education, occasionally you want to alphabetize your papers. Honestly, I don't alphabetize much anymore. I used to have an LMS that really you needed to enter the grades in alphabetical order. It wanted you to type, enter, type, enter, and it really did not like you mousing around. The current LMS I'm using doesn't mind you mousing around. There's no real advantage to doing alphabetical order, so I don't. But the beauty of these guys is they really do help you if you have a medium to medium-large size class. So obviously, if you've got 10 students, you don't need help alphabetizing 10 papers. At least I sure hope you don't. But once you're up into the 20, 30, even into the hundreds range, you really want some help. And these guys work really nicely. And the way they work is they've got flaps. Each one's labeled with a letter, so if the person's, Albert Aardvark would go here, and so on and so forth. You alphabetize them within the little areas, and then you've now got your stack of papers all separated by the little flaps that have helped you stick them in the right order. Then you can just take the thing, grab the papers, pull this guy out carefully, and you've got an alphabetized list. Works wonderfully. Obviously, the size of the flaps aren't infinite, and so if you've got more than 100 or so, it's going to get kind of tight in here. So if you've got, say, 120, 150, 200 students that you're trying to alphabetize, one, I am so sorry. But second, this is probably not going to help you out that much. It's just too many papers. But for the, 20-some, 100 or so students in a class, these guys really make life nice. They're not too horribly expensive. At least I've had this thing for years. At least it wasn't back when I bought it. And after a couple of times, they'll pay for themselves. They've really made life nice for you. Okay, let's talk about a little bit of kit for when you are at your board. You're going to be standing a lot, especially if you have a fairly long class. So 2 pieces of recommendation. One, get yourself some good shoes. I don't mean fancy shoes. I mean ones where you can stand and walk around for a while. Something that you can definitely stand for a few hours, because you probably are going to be standing for a few hours. Second piece of recommendation. If you're in a room that you've got some degree of control over, now sometimes you just randomly assign a classroom, you walk in, you teach, you leave, that's your entire involvement with that room. But other times, you're going to be in that room over and over again, maybe you can talk with folks about putting some decorations up, etc. Well, in that case, I strongly recommend getting one of those mats. You know, the type that the cashiers use, that they stand on, these things are really nice. Gives you a nice bit of squish to be standing on, especially when you're in front of the computer giving PowerPoints, if that's your thing. This way, you're standing on it, and it really does feel a lot better, nicer on your joints, nicer on your feet. So I do encourage you, pick something up like that if you're going to be in the same room repeatedly, and if you have some control over the room. Obviously, if you're just going to the room, teaching, and leaving, well, you can bring your shoes with you. So I do recommend some good shoes. Hey, so chalkboards are still very much a thing. Definitely beloved by math faculty, as well as several others. I personally have a soft spot in my heart for the literal chalkboard. They just work, which is nice. Now, there's a couple of things you can deal with these that are fairly helpful to think about. For starters, these guys take colored chalk really well. Dry erase boards, only certain markers are actually going to work. The yellows, some of the pastels, no one's going to be able to see them. Just don't even bother with them. Usually blue, green, black, red. Actually, I should say maybe green, depends on the shade. Those work well on dry erase boards, but with chalkboards, most of your colors are going to work pretty good. Some of your browns don't really work. So go ahead, grab yourself some nice colored chalk, and second, grab yourself a chalk holder. So the idea here is it holds the chalk, it's got little grippers on it. It holds the chalk, and then you write with it much more like a pen. So now it's very easy to write with. Works nicely, and if you drop it, you only have about a 50% chance of breaking your chalk instead of like a 100% chance. Nice also for storage. You can tuck the chalk back up into there, keeps it nice and safe, and this particular model has a magnet on the back, which is definitely helpful. I wouldn't mind a little bit more powerful of a magnet, though. It's a little bit underpowered and they do tend to slide. Now, I do encourage you to get a plastic model instead of a metal one, because as you're writing, you will eventually scratch onto the board. The plastic ones aren't going to hurt the board, whereas the metal one occasionally will, and definitely sounds horrendous. Now, of course, you've got your chalk. You need an eraser. I haven't really seen these for the chalkboards, but definitely for the dry erase boards, they do make magnetic erasers. So instead of having the erasers in the chalkboard tray, they will literally stick to the board, which is really nice. Once again, I haven't actually seen those for chalkboards just yet. I hope they're floating around. They're definitely there for dry erase boards, and they are totally wonderful. Just have your eraser stuck to the board and you go and put it right back. Definitely a nice piece of kit to grab a hold of. Okay, before I end, let's swing by the lab. If you are doing labs that you're using exam gloves, some kind of disposable gloves, then obviously you're going to have boxes of gloves, and those can kind of just like float around everywhere. That becomes a pain. Glove racks, these guys are awesome. They come quite a few different makes and models. The ones I like, either slide out from the side or can be loaded from the top. In this case, I've actually got 2 racks, a 3 and a 1, to get our extra large, large, medium, and small, which sometimes you actually need an X small, just giving you a heads up for that. But these guys are wonderful. Really does make a disorderly situation very, very orderly. So strongly encourage those if you are running a lab that utilizes gloves. And so with that said, I hope this has been some useful kit for you all, and I will see you in later videos.